Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Veg Networking Canada. We are a community where vegan plant-based companies connect and collaborate. We honor, acknowledge, and respect that many of us are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many Indigenous peoples of Canada. Today, we have a special guest with us who is a three-time Canadian national all-natural bodybuilding champion and a health author who is championing the connection between gut and hormonal health. Veg Networking Canada is pleased to introduce the co-founder of BIOptimizers. Welcome, Wade Lightheart.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here and excited to dive into this topic.
Yeah, we're thrilled to hear more about you and what you got going on in business, but let's start with you personally. Can you tell everybody listening the story of what led you to go vegan and how that unfolded?
Yeah, great question. So, I grew up like most Canadians on the East Coast, and it was meat every meal, and we hunted and fished and all of those elements that, there was no options. I'm going to date myself. I'm in my 50s and very, especially in a rural area of Canada, but like if someone came out and said that they were vegan, well, you might be shot on sight. So I understand some of the resistance that happened. And of course, I didn't even think about it. I got into the nutrition and industry also as a bodybuilding champion and had a lot of success in that and moved to the West Coast back. Oh man, that was way back in like 1990, early 1990s, and got exposed to a culture that had essentially more vegetarian and vegan options. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And even though I was always a curious person in on trying to understand the variances between dietary strategy, what were the strengths, what were the weaknesses, what were the opportunities and liabilities of those elements. And there was always a conversation, particularly around the athletic side, that you couldn't be a high performance athlete as a vegan or vegetarian or someone that was on a plant centric diet. And I got into spirituality through an interesting set of circumstances and started meditating and following some Eastern philosophy. And there was an aspect in the meditation element that suggested that a vegan or vegetarian style of diet would be superior for meditation and cognitive development on that element. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And so I found myself in this interesting juxtaposition is I wanted to continue on with my bodybuilding career, but no one knew how to do this. And I forget the fellow's name. He was a world champion vegan tennis star. And I went to him and I said, well, he was one of the early adapters way back in the 70s on the pro tennis circuit. And I went to a seminar with him and I said, and he talked about all the challenges that you might face in his professional community. And he said, I said, well, do you think that I could win a national champion? Do you think I could go to world championships on a plant-based diet? He goes, I don't know, you have to try it and find out. And specifically, the specific influence was I read a book called The Holy Science by a fellow by the name of Swami Sri Yukteswar, who was the guru of the famous yogi Paramahansa Yogananda, wrote autobiography of Yogi, was really the first yogi to live extensively in the West and advocated a vegetarian diet. And the beauty of that book, The Holy Science, is Yukteswar, who is an extraordinarily high intellectual person, outlined a set of principles based on the teeth, the digestive tract, the nervous system response to, say, slaughtering of animals or being around meat houses, and the instant resistance to it, where a tiger would have a positive result, but a human didn't. And the same, and he identified that. And then from that, nature said that man's senses in its ultimate state would be ultimately geared towards that lifestyle. And I thought, well, I couldn't find any fault in the argument. And of course, I was a classically trained nutritionist and exercise physiologist and had worked extensively, had a large practice in Vancouver at the time. And I thought, wow, I'm going to test this out. And I remember reaching out to my bodybuilding coach, who was essentially the top bodybuilding coach in the world at the time. His name is Scott Abel. And I said, look, I want to go do these drug tested competitions and I want to do it on a vegan diet. And I want to see if it's successful. He says, like, wait, I don't even know how to do that. I'm like, that's okay. Just manage the training side and we'll work on the dietary side and see if we can do this. Now, prior to, I had retired a little bit before that in 1998, because after winning a provincial championship and going to the nationals, I got I had a bunch of challenges, and so I tried to we tried to make this. I said, I don't want to go down that road anymore. I think it's really suboptimal health wise. Well, the principles of bodybuilding are really great. The sport had become essentially a drug cult, and I didn't want to be part of that. And so we started to make an adaptation first into a vegetarian diet. In other words, I would, supplement with whey protein or things like that because there was no plant-based proteins at that time. This was, quite a long time ago. And so we went down that road. I won a national championship. I went to the Mr. Universe contest. And after the Mr. Universe contest, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks after that contest. My digestive system was wrecked. And I met a guy by the name of Dr. Michael O'Brien, who was providing seminars in the Vancouver area. And Dr. O'Brien was like at a central casting for that movie Cocoon, if you guys have ever watched it, where like these super vibrant senior citizens that had all these remarkable qualities. And I went to his seminar, and again, he was also echoing a set of principles, and he was on the raw vegan side. And he had healed Bernard Jensen of cancer and paralysis. He had overcome cirrhosis of the liver and colon cancer himself. And at those times, those were fatal illnesses, essentially, of which he was able to recover. And he had two elements that he advocated. One was a raw food diet of plants only. Second thing was an emphasis on optimizing the digestive system through the use of enzymes and probiotics, hydrochloric acid, things like that, in order that you could extract enough nutrients out of that diet, even if you had a suboptimal digestive system, in order to produce health. And he was primarily dealing with people who were sick or had diseases or had all these elements. And so I went, wow, okay. I went on his program, and in 6 months, I recaptured my physique. And I also had a new level of vibrancy, energy. My sleep dropped from about 8 hours a day to about 6, and I was still fully recovered. So I knew that there was a difference. And I had adjusted to what I thought was the sense of feeling full when I was on a meat-based diet to actually, no, I'm not. That feeling wasn't really feeling full. That feeling was digestive distress that I was having before. And I was like, oh, okay. So Matt and I started our company, and we started producing enzymes that were particularly emphasized on the proteolytic activity. So we'll get into the digestive element of that, what that means. But the idea was, in order to recover from training, you have to have enough amino acids. People think of protein, but it's not protein you need. You need the amino acids that will be used into building blocks, energy units, peptides, neurotransmitters, etc. And from a performance side, there was two distinct problems that every vegan or vegetarian are going to run into. You just run into them faster as an athlete because of the demands of your lifestyle. And that is, how do I get enough amino acids, not protein? In other words, on a typical plant-based diet, because I would say, and I researched this way back into like growing techniques and farming technology, we have to recognize that our farming technology today and what we're using in farming has transformed so dramatically that even the plants that we're getting have probably lowered their amino acid content significantly, as well as phytonutrients and minerals and vitamins and all of that element. So like you go to a Mennonite farm, for example, and eat an heirloom tomato or you got like one tomato or one cucumber, like you're full. And I'm like, well, how come I can go buy an organic tomato or an organic vegetable that's the same concept, but I don't have the same feeling. And I call this term nutrification. Then I looked at hemp protein as a substance. And so what's interesting about hemp, it didn't go through the conventional system that happened in all the other products. So you had a high protein content plant based option. The problem was it's it smelled like a barn and tasted like dirt, and not everybody would do it. But being a bodybuilder, I said I don't care, I'm going to do it. So over the course of 4 years, I coached over 15,000 people around the world on various types of diets and stuff, and got a lot of feedback on how to optimize for a performance diet. I decided to go um, back into competition again, and won another national championship, went to the Natural Olympia again as a raw vegan. And I was doing that by optimizing my conversion of the protein I was eating into the amino acids that I required. And that was a breakthrough element. Nobody thought it could be done. I proved that it was possible. And at that point, I started advocating on a lot more bigger platforms and things like that. Is like, no, I'm not against anybody doing any diet, but if you're going to go this way, there's some key elements that you want to consider in order to optimize that, especially when you're dealing with an extreme demand on the body from a performance side. And since that time, I've maintained that diet ever since. So I've been on a plant-centric diet. And I would say I would call myself a mostly vegan. I do occasionally will have like, cheese or something like that. I call it, I'm a recreational cheegan, but no meat products or anything like that has ever touched my lips since 2001. So I've been on this program for what's that make it 20? We're going on 24 years this year, and inadvertently for everyone that gets the things, well, you can't be an athlete and stuff. At 50 years old, I went back, won another international title, and went to the world championship again, and had the same form that I had at age 31. So ultimately, it can be done, but there are some iterations that I think are frankly not well voiced in the vegetarian community or the vegan community. And what happens is if you run into trouble as a vegan or a vegetarian, you go to a naturopath, you go to the doctor, they throw the whole dietary stuff under the bus because you don't know how to optimize it. And then, the biggest advocates now become the biggest adversaries. And I think I want to bridge that gap for people so that they don't, if they want to maintain that as a lifestyle for whatever reasons, then you have a full understanding of the elements that are contributing to success and whether the elements that might be contributing to failure.
So in terms of the business, BIOptimizers, is that how you got started in business, or were there iterations before this? Or tell us a story about your origin as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So literally after I had competed at the Mr. Olympia, my business partner came to me, we were both personal trainers, and we had complete dietary oppositional philosophies. And I think one of the most important things people, and this is my pet peeve, particularly amongst the vegan community and the plant-based community, is they start projecting their own moral values onto other people, and they create a position where people are butting heads, as opposed to extracting what are the universal principles and what are the elements to optimize. And so Matt and I were forced with this, but him being an online marketer and me being a successful athlete created a business opportunity for us that we wanted to take advantage of. And so we did. And we went at it, and it became a talking point, is like, how do you two people actually get along? Right. And so we had plenty of battles and plenty of arguments. And he brought some elements out of his ketogenic diet that I learned from him, in particular around essential fatty acids, that I was able to translate on a plant-based diet, which was really very helpful because I had a lot of friends that would struggle. I was able to handle the athletic side of the equation, but then there was other key elements: hormonal optimization, brain function, various skin elements, the microbiome elements that we had shared points of interest. And so I was able to influence him and he was able to influence me. And we started manufacturing products, particularly around digestive optimization. And the reason we identified that is because regardless of what dietary strategy that you employ, the biggest weakness in the link is going to be your digestion. And a lot of people are attracted either to the vegan movement or away from the vegan movement to some other diet for that particular reason. There is a genetic element. Some people are more genetically aligned with a plant-based diet, and some people are less genetically inclined. But if that's a choice that you're making for moral, ethical, or personal reasons, or environmental reasons, or whatever you want to, whatever that category is, that doesn't change the fundamental physiological elements that you have to address. So we focused on that in particular. I didn't make any proclamations or I didn't denigrate anyone for their dietary strategies because it turns out that, well, vegans and vegetarians and everything all down the list from carnivores, the keto people to in the road people, they get all benefit from optimizing their digestion. And our company is now that was 20 years ago when we started, and now we have a wide range of people that we service. Of course, all the vegetarian people come my way because I'm able to provide the insights that help them really have the next level of health and vitality that they want to do and maintain the reasons to support the reasons they might go to there, and you always have to be very careful about morals and ethics, what's valuable and okay for me. And one of the great things about Canada is like, be you and be okay with you and without proselytizing or any of that stuff. So,
And the business has been around for quite some time. Where's it going in the future?
well, the last 3 straight years, we're Inc. 5,000 company, which is the fastest growing companies in America. We'll be Last year we served over 1 million customers globally, and I'm very excited this year because we are now expanding into the largest vegan vegetarian market on the world, which is in India, which I've had a long, strong passion because of its philosophical influences in my own life. And now it feels like I'm coming back home. Interesting. That's where my first Mr. Universe contest was. It was in India as well. So I have this deep connection. I have a lot of Indian friends, and it's great. So I've got a wealth of information about the historical and cultural elements, dietary practices, as well as the challenges that culture in particular, who are a higher percentage of vegan and vegetarian than any other market there is. And so what we identify that and help them as well. So I've got a lot of experience in that area.
Well, that's a pretty cool personal full circle moment for you. Now, in terms of optimizing digestion and the industry that you are in, what are some transformations or trends that you're noticing or have noticed?
Well, right now, and I want to identify there's I've been on 6 straight podcasts in the last week and a half on menopausal, perimenopausal, premenopausal, postmenopausal, like all the whole rainbow of menopausal whatevers. And what's happening a lot of times, if you are following the trends in the nutrition industry, what you're hearing out of a lot of the influencers that are in that market is that, oh, if you're a female at that area, you need to be eating your 50 grams of protein in the morning, 50 grams of protein in the afternoon, et cetera. So it's a very protein-centric diet, and most of them are advocating an animal-centric diet around that because they just don't have the chops, the understanding, the awareness about how to do it on a plant side. So rather than dive deep into that elements, which I've done for the last 20 plus years, they just throw the whole strategy, the plant-based thing, under the bus. And that's really out of their either convenience, lack of interest, lack of understanding, nor being aware of the solutions that you might have in regards to that. And so now, on both sides of the platform, whether they're plant-based or not, I'm getting all of this input of like, well, I've gone to this thing, I'm eating this high protein diet, and I have all this gas and bloating and the digestive stress, and my hormones aren't fixing the way they want. And so they're even more frustrated at it. So I've been addressing those issues because many of the performance parameters that I discovered way back in the day when I was focused on bodybuilding, have applications to people, particularly around hormonal optimization, which is an element of nutrition. Hormones is the state, if you will, that you're putting the fuel into. And a hormone, if you have an optimized hormonal set, you have a lot more variance that you can handle. And if you have a suboptimal hormonal set, the things that you could manage because you had hormonal optimization are now completely unmanageable. So a lot of people who have been very successful in whatever dietary strategy, whether it's a plant-based or non-plant-based diet, they hit a hormonal shift, whether it's men or women, and they're like, oh my God, my testosterone or my is crashing, or my estrogen's out of control, or I'm like having these fluctuations. And then the only advice that they're getting is, well, you need to go to an animal-based diet. That's the only option. And some of the biggest advocates now get flipped the other way out of their own immediate needs. And I'm here to say, no, you don't have to flip your needs, but you do need to address those issues in a way that makes sense from someone who's done it and help, literally thousands and thousands of people address those needs.
Yeah, you're right. Hormonal optimization. That's interesting. And the way that you described it is sort of like your central nervous system. It's like if your central nervous system isn't regulated, it's just like you don't have much room for error for things to throw you off. Whereas if you do have a regulated central nervous system, you can handle more pressure. And similar to the hormonal optimization, at least that's what I'm hearing. So you've constantly mentioned the word strategy a lot so far. So for you, for Matt, for BIOptimizers, what is your give back strategy, or what does charity mean to you guys?
Great question. Um, Charity comes in a lot of identifications, and there's a trend in what I would say the front-facing charitable branding, which I'm not in favor of. And what that means is, and I can tell you the deep down, dirty, dark secrets of the marketing world and people. A number of years ago, there was a whole push to say, oh, you need to have some charitable component on your website, not because of the cause that you're involved. It's because it improved conversions. That was the motivation. And then you saw for the online marketers, been in the online marketing space for all that time. There was a whole massive trend in influencers and what I would say grandstanding about what values and what do we do. And then when you dive deep into the charitable elements, a lot of them were not really delivering on what the promises were. It was kind of like it was a branding or virtue signaling aspect, and it started in the digital space. And so what we've found a lot more successful for ourselves personally is quiet, local, charitable activity that is between us and the person of influence without any societal, social, or collective marketing benefit. To me, and I learned this from my grandfather a long time ago, is when he died, um, the minister came up and he said, a lot of people don't know about the charitable contributions of this person, which he never ever spoke about. And that really hit home for me. And I've practiced that, whether it's in my local community here, like, for example, there are homeless people and stuff here in the area. I practically have one right now that's out washing my car. Um, I try to create opportunities for growth and in around that, whether it's people who need money for education or money for events and stuff like that. I go about that and do it kind of quietly.
Yeah, you're right. The charitable greenwashing, if you want to put it that way, is definitely something that's real. And now, not to put you on the spot too much because of what you just said, but are there any organizations that are close to your heart that you do want other people to know about or hear about?
None that's met my criteria of investigation. In fact, I'm in the process of setting up my own charitable foundation so that I can take the tax benefits, because my charitable contributions are starting to scale up pretty high personally. And now that I'm under the high tax jurisdiction of California, I've decided to create my own charitable foundation that I can manage and ensure that, number one, I do get the tax incentives for providing charitable, but I also am directing where that money goes and how that's handled, because uh, it's just so hard to determine whether that is true. Like, for example, if you look at a charitable foundation in the United States, If you get into the weeds of the legal elements, I'm not sure what it is for Canada, but 95% of the business can be used for not like administrative elements inside of the business. So when you start looking into things, we've all heard about some of the elements of various political organizations and characters, and you dive under the weeds, and it's pretty nasty. It's really just a front for a variety of nefarious or personal benefits as opposed to actually what it's supposed to be around.
So, in terms of resources, earlier on, you had mentioned a book. You mentioned The Holy Science, I think that you said it was called. So, of course, resources, books, podcasts, apps, mental health related, and whatever that might look like. Do you have any resources that you would recommend for other entrepreneurs?
Ooh, boys, oh boys, I could go through. I don't even know how many where I would start. I think, yeah, there's a great book. The It's an unusual book called Wallace T. Wattles, The Science of Being Rich, The Science of Being Healthy, and I forget what the science of something else was around. And it's kind of like I think, a better version of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. But the primary aspect is about how one personally conducts themselves from an efficiency and systematic way of thinking and acting in order to produce abundance in any given area. Well, it was health, or whether it was wealth, or influence. That was great. Here's another element I thought was really cool. I thought Brendan Burchard's work on Expert Academy, which I went to years ago, I thought he mastered the elements of what it is to position yourself as an expert in a given area and what you can go down that road. He had a big influence on me. I would go back to way, way, way back to T. Harv Eker stuff, learning to sell from the stage. I would also say Jordan Belfort's. So he's the Wolf on Wall Street that crashed and burned, and then he made an amazing recovery. He's got a sales system that I think I've done a lot of sales system, but his mechanics of understanding the selling process. And I think that really shortchanges a lot of people in life because they have a negative version of sales and they don't understand the mechanics of the sales. So I'm a kind of guy, grew up on a farm. You had to understand what was underneath the hood. You just didn't get in the tractor and drive down the road. You didn't have you got to understand what goes wrong because things break. And if you don't understand the mechanics or you don't understand the maintenance of that, then you don't really understand that and you don't know where to begin. And I think if people actually take apart and understand the sales process, the business process, the visualization process, the mechanics of selling on the stage, so selling online to selling in person, which is really the mastery of influence. And we're all trying to influence people in our own ways, whether it's our kids, our partner, our friends. And we have these unknown techniques, which are part of our lexicon and conversation. And then you have some people that are just really good. And you're like, some people are naturals, but the real best of any category are always people that dive into the details. And those individuals in particular dove into the details on a level that demonstrably were able to be proven and replicated through a number of people who had absolutely were terrible at those particular elements. And to me, that's the real testament of success. It's even with my bodybuilding coach, Scott, he trained Mr. Olympians and Mr. Locals. And, and the elements is today's world. We want a quick answer. We want the little soundboy. We want the Instagram post. And there's so many variables that go into that curated piece that aren't being communicated, that what you end up getting is a whole lot of opinions and information that aren't really relevant to where you are and where you want to go. And the difference between those two is your level of competency and understanding of that particular area and your ability to apply a set of principles that you can refine for your own personality, your own lifestyle. So I did the exact same thing in how to optimize a plant-based diet for myself as a bodybuilding person, which no one said was possible at the time when I did it. And now it's much more common today. There's been a plethora of plant-based companies out there in the world, and I'm grateful that I've been a little bit of a contributor into that movement.
Yeah, for sure. And you kind of answered partly, we have two more questions. You kind of partly answered the last one there in talking about the importance, the paramount importance of understanding the mechanics of a system. Because if you don't, how are you going to iterate properly? How are you going to maximize efficiency? How are you going to improve? Things are always going to break. And if you don't know what that is, then that's just a nightmare and, a lot of wasted time and energy there. But the science of getting rich, the science of being great, and the science of being well.
That's right. That's
Three of
right.
his nine books. So second to last one for you. It's really open-ended, and we've had people answer it from a multitude of different ways, but it's just one word, and I want to know what you say when you hear it. Inspiration.
Mentorship. So if I look back to any area of success that I've had, and I've been very grateful in my life for the mentors I had. My early mentors, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, was a vision. I had a dream that I would one day compete at Mr. Olympias and Mr. Universe contests and live in California and have a nutritional supplement company that helped millions of people around the world. And that happened. And Arnold's at the gym that I train at, and I see him in the mornings and things like that, which is cool. He talks about his mentors. If I look in the online marketing space, Matt, my business partner, has been a mentor and advocate for me, and he's got a series of mentors. The people I mentioned were mentors. Whether it was my bodybuilding coach, Scott, he was producing better results than anybody else. And what it was is someone that was so I would refer to Paul Chek as another friend of mine that I think he's one of the most integrated humans I've ever met and continues to mentor me. So I would classify them, break those down into a couple of categories. There's the super mentor, the Tony Robbins, the Elon Musk's, Jeff, whatever that person might be for you, the area of expertise. I think those provide the ultimate inspiration, and sometimes they're inaccessible. Although today you have a lot more accessibility to the principles they might advocate. But there's a step down aspect, which would be maybe your coaching relationship or the person that you're aspiring to get to next on your journey. And what I've found is usually it's a person that's 10 years advanced from where you are. In other words, they're not so far away from where you are that they're too unattainable, and they're close enough to you that they're addressing what's going to happen or the challenges or opportunities you're going to face over the next 10 years of your life. So they're the space of relevancy from the top down inspirational elements, they're providing you the insights and the techniques to integrate those higher level principles into a workable daily practice in your own life. And I would say that's the bridge between those two elements that have inspired me and continue to inspire. And I've been fortunate enough to inspire a few other people myself, and have played that intermediary role. And so it's a great journey, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, we love that answer when just one word, inspiration equals mentorship. Very cool. And take it for what it's worth. You're an author. Maybe you're going to be another author, but like I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking of your next book called The Mentorship Bridge or The Mentorship Ladder, something like that. So this you did it again there too. And this is what I was saying earlier in terms of you kind of answered the last question in part. And that's because this last question is, do you have any advice, which are the kind of parts that I was talking about? Do you have any advice, lessons, or tips for other entrepreneurs?
Yes. Put your health first. I cannot tell you how many people, and right now I'm being mentored by a fellow by the name of Garrett Gunderson. He's got a great course called Multipliers. He wrote a book called, interesting enough, Killing Sacred Cows and what the Rockefellers would do. He's been kind of an anti-financial establishment guy in a lot of ways. And what a lot of people look from, say, that market is You're going to sacrifice everything now for this future ideal that you're going to get to. And I would say that entrepreneurs or people looking at wealth accumulation solely are more likely to sacrifice their health than, say, other people, because it's almost, and that was kind of the culture that emerged out of the 80s, like it's cocaine and smile and dial, it's and then they became, in the markets. And I was around back in the Vancouver Stock Exchange days, and I'd be dealing with the guys that were, they're on testosterone and stimulants, and they're calling and smiling and dialing and making money. And then, I saw this, I saw so many of them would be coming to me, and I'd be fixing them up health wise, and they would take these like intermediary steps trying to mask long-term problems. And now that they became my age, some of them aren't with us anymore. Some of them have gone through heart attacks, divorces, diabetes, cancer. I mean, just a plethora of things. So they received the monetary riches that they were looking for, the sense what they thought it would bring, and they don't have the health in order to enjoy it. And the cool thing that's happening now is there is a movement within the entrepreneurship, abundance mentality, that is recognizing that, what, all that stuff doesn't matter. You want to live your best life now. You want to, and I, Bobby Kennedy just said this so eloquently when he was speaking to Congress. And Bobby goes to the same gym I do, and I get to chat with him every now and then. And I'm really excited about what he's going to be able to provide for our industry, because he's addressing some of the agricultural issues and the pharmaceutical issues that have subverted our institutions of education and influence. And he said, a person that has their health has 1,000 dreams, and a person that doesn't has only one, that they can get healthy. And I was an advisor. I've been an advisor to the American Anti-Cancer Institute for over a decade. My sister died of cancer early on in life, and so I know the impacts of what happens when you're robbed of your health or robbed of your life or quality of life because of something that you might have been able to address through a great healthy regimen. And with digital media being so addictive, you can oftentimes get into this voyeuristic or intellectualization of health, and that you're not actually doing the daily practices. And so now I'm part of a larger group of entrepreneurs who have recognized that, and they're advocating for health and family first and finances second, because then it makes all of the benefits of having an abundant lifestyle valuable. And I figured that out early because of those early influences for me. Like for me, my health and my vitality and my diet and my nutritional supplementation, and because of that early influence where I dealt with my sister's death as a teenager, I was like, I want to avoid that for me. So I had that. It's a tragic situation, but it gave me the advantages of the realities that you don't discover until oftentimes it's too late in life, or really, really challenging to come back from that. And so I made that part of my practice the entire journey. And now I'm in my 50s. I feel fantastic. I've got all the abundance that I wanted. I might not have gotten there as fast as some people, but I think now that I enjoy a more robust and rounded life. I just had my wife just had my first child at 52 recently. So it's been great. And now I'm seeing the opportunity to pass that on to, my son. And it's exciting that I have that to lean back on and to provide those insights. And if I can make one other comment for people on the vegetarian lifestyle, recognize that if you're getting outside influence that says that you can't go that way, recognize it's not so much that you can't go that way. It's that the person giving you that advice doesn't know how to get there, get you there. And I wrote a book on it, Ultimate Nutrition Bible. We break down all the diets, the optimal side of it and the suboptimal side. I have a really big element on the vegetarian side of things. It's a great reference guide. So if people are looking for information on that, then they can see that and take it from someone who has broken all the molds on a vegan diet, have been able to have athletic success, business success, health success. So you can do it too if you understand those fundamental internal mechanics of how to optimize your diet for vegetarian lifestyle, vegan and vegetarian lifestyle, I should say.
Oh, it's so great, Wade, and congratulations, man, to you and your family. That's amazing. I love
Thank
it.
you.
Now, that's it. Is there anything in the conversation that we had with you today that we missed, or anything that you want to double back to, or any announcements or anything like that before I let everybody know the website they can go check out?
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to, I touched on this particularly around the protein-centric diets, which are oftentimes an obstacle for people on a vegan diet just because of the capacity. And I want to break this down really, really quickly and succinctly to understand this. What the protein people don't know and what the vegans don't know is actually the same thing. It's that conversion of amino acids. I do believe where they are right is that you need sufficient amount of protein in your diet in order to optimize your health. The problem is the conversion of which is a digestive element that involves enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and probiotics. Those three elements are going to optimize your digestion. And almost no one has that figured out on all sides of the food camp. And so we've particularly targeted on that. I had my own digestive issues, I had to solve them, had to figure it out. And we built a company around that. And then we had to solve the digestive issues for millions of people around the world. And if you want to go to that higher protein diet for either athletic aspect or managing a suboptimal hormonal state or for weight loss in maintaining satiety, because the two elements that you maintain satiety is protein and fiber. And fiber feeds your probiotics, but if you've taken antibiotics or you were sick in the past or things, you probably don't have an optimized microbiome, and you may be okay to do a like genetically, you might a vegan diet might be really good for you, but your microbiome's been destroyed. So you're not going to see it in a gene test. You're not going to see it in a hormone test. And what I'm encouraging people is if you can optimize your digestion, we have a lot of options. I got a great course on the site that kind of explains all those elements of lifestyle that I've incorporated over the last 25 years in order to do this as a vegan. Then guess what? You're going to be in the sweet spot. You're going to be able to have all the answers for those tough questions around the dinner table, or your friends or family or colleagues that don't know the differences. And you're going to be able to provide also some information. But inside of that, I want to also caution, and the thing that I really am against is what I call vigilante veganism, and that you're projecting your values and morals onto other people as opposed to advocating the benefits and being able to answer what other people see as the liabilities of a vegan diet in a concise scientific way that shows them that it's not only is it possible and why the benefits can be elicited, and also provide some insights into them that they can carry over and say, oh, you know what? I never thought of optimizing my digestion. Maybe that's why I don't feel so good after this steak, or maybe that's why I don't feel that. And if you become an advocate and an influencer from a magnanimous way, in a way that assists and help people as opposed to condemning people, then you start to bridge the gap. And I think that's where the groundswell of people moving towards a vegan diet will grow and continue to expand in the world. And so your ultimate goals of maybe advocating for it are best done through a position of love, magnanimity, and understanding of the nuances below a dietary strategy, not just on the surface information.
Awesome, Wade. Thank you so much. So everybody, you can find out more online, bioptimizers.com, bioptimizers, bioptimizers.com. Uh, Thank you, everybody who's been listening with us live, everybody who's listening to this on your own time. Thanks for being here and spending some time with us. This has been another episode of Veg Networking Canada, where we had a great conversation with the co-founder of BIOptimizers, Wade Lightheart. Thank you, Wade, and everybody. We'll catch you soon on another episode. Take care. Bye for now.